every human being is worth listening to a story.
Who you are here in high school, but it's not who you are, right? You'll find yourself there.
Failure's okay, and everybody does that, and nobody actually really cares if you fail as long as you kind of keep going.
How you respond to adversity marks your character is what I like to say, and in college you're given plenty of opportunity to respond.
I could have done it without college, there's no way.
Not everybody knows that they can do it if they just do a little bit more.
I've certainly never known anybody that has come back and said, I wish I would have messed around more. I wish I would have goofed off more.
Just because something horrible happens or something that seems like, oh, that's what I wanted to do and I can't do it, that doesn't mean you can't. It means you have to take that experience and make positive out of it.
My name is Jennifer McIntyre, and I teach English here, and this is my first year at Sweet Home High School, but it's my 12th year of teaching.
What motivated you to become an educator?
I had kind of a circuitous route to teaching, actually. When I first decided that I was going to go to college, I went to school to be a vet. And I wanted to be a large animal vet because I rode horses. And then I saw too many horses get injured and had too many heartbreaks and decided that I couldn't do that anymore. And so I knew that when I went to college, I wanted to have a degree that had a job at the end of it. Mm-hmm. So as a young 19-year-old, I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that teaching was a job. Mm. And I had a few English teachers in particular that I still talk to a few of them. They had a huge impact on my life, and so I decided that English teaching was the direction I was going to go. Mm. So I have kind of two separate college experiences. I went to Washington State University Pullman for my undergraduate, and I went right out of high school. And I got my degree in English education. So the way that their program worked is that I got a kind of a dual degree of an English literature degree with a teaching degree as well, with a teaching certification. And what that did is that allowed me to be able to teach with just a bachelor's degree. And I taught for 9 years until I went back for my master's degree. So almost a decade after going to college, I went back to college and I got a master's degree from Southern Oregon University in theater production and design. And I got that specifically because I had a theater program at my previous school that was floundering and really needed someone to take leadership roles there. And I really loved the kids that were there. And so I got a production degree because I don't want to be on stage, but I loved the idea of reaching out with kids in an extracurricular way. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't know that I was going to be a teacher, and I kind of had to let go of a lot of perceptions that I had since I was a little girl that I was going to be a vet. But I learned through my undergrad program that teaching meant as much outreach for things and people that I loved as veterinary medicine would have. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity that I had when I got my teaching degree in an undergrad situation meant that I got to learn a lot more about people than what I knew before. So I grew up in a really small town similar to Sweet Home, and my first teaching position was in a very large city. Vancouver, Washington has a lot of high schools, has 2 different school districts, and the school where I taught was a very different demographic than anything I'd encountered before. And I learned more about what it meant to have a human experience from my students there. I learned more about being compassionate to the people in the world around me. And so I'd say my student teaching experience, which was part of my college experience, led me down a path of learning about humanity in a way that I don't think would have been true otherwise.
Did you face any challenges during your college years? And if so, how did you overcome them?
I did. I was one of those kids that really wanted to leave home when I went to college, so I went as far away from home as I could. I grew up in Colorado and went to school in Washington, where I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have a connection to a community. And that was really hard. I got myself in some situations that were really taxing and took a lot of healing as I went through my college career. But it took a while for me to get my groove, and what ended up happening because I didn't find a community to be in right away, or I didn't have that support system when I went to college, I got really depressed. So I really struggled with depression when I was in college, and because I was young and I didn't have the community to help me through that, it was a really lonely time to figure out who to ask for help or when to ask for help or where to go. And that was a huge challenge for me in my undergrad program.
What extracurricular activities or clubs were you involved in during college?
I joined horse polo.
Horse polo.
Because I rode horses when I was younger, I wanted to continue riding horses when I was in college, but they didn't have an equestrian program that I knew about. So I knew that horse polo had to do with horses, but I had no idea what it was. But I joined it and was a president of the club, and I was the horse manager, so I took care of all the horses one year, and my main group of friends in college came from that particular club.
How did your college professors impact your learning journey?
So I have two answers for that. In a big university like WSU, it can sometimes feel really easy to get lost because you are sometimes in lecture halls with 700 other kids, and that felt really lonely for a while. But both once I got into the School of Education where I was going to become a teacher and when I did my grad program, I was in smaller class sizes. So sometimes classes were 7 other people, sometimes it was like a class of 25, but I realized that the smaller the class, the more attention I could get from my professors. And it was the first time in my academic career that I had gotten really pointed feedback about my intellectual capacity and felt really valuable. It taught me how to reflect on my critical thinking, and it taught me how to embrace the critical thinking that I already had and acknowledge that I am smart. And it took a long time to hear it enough from different professors that I am smart to really believe it. But it had a huge impact on my own self-worth and my self-image as I became an academic.
Share a memorable moment from your college days.
So in grad school, the way that my grad program worked is that it was an online program, and then we would spend a month in Ashland in the summertime, and we had this intensive 12-course month where we were just in classes for 12 hours a day, and then we had all night to get assignments done. And there was this room that was like a design room, and it was probably the best bonding that I had with classmates because we would just stay there till 4 in the morning, and they would just open the room for us and say make sure you leave and close things up when you're done. But we were all delirious, and we were all just exhausted and working on this same hard thing together, and being able to recognize that we're beyond tired, but also working towards this really cool goal and doing really hard work. It's my favorite feeling. It was my favorite memory of feeling really accomplished.
Are you still in contact with some of your
I am.
college friends?
Yeah, and we talk all the time, and they're all in different places. So the grad program brought people from Minnesota and California and Idaho, and we all get together in Ashland every couple of years to just have a reunion and go see an OSF show and hang out and see what everybody's doing with their careers.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
What skills or knowledge gained in college have been most valuable in your teaching career?
So in my teaching program, I think there are 2 things that became really important for me. I took a classroom management class from a woman who taught in a school similar to my first school. And the thing that she really drilled with us is that every human being is worth listening to a story. Even the hardest kids or the hardest adults to get along with have some sort of story that's worth listening to. And that has shaped how I teach in my classroom. I love teaching narrative writing because I think it's an opportunity to hear about students' lives, especially because teachers have 150, 130 students at a time, and it's impossible to hear from everybody. So I love hearing through writing what students have to say. So that particular professor had a really large impact on how I view getting to know students. And then there are just my grad program in particular had some intellectual aspects to it about analyzing text and critical thought around what makes a world interesting and how you consume a piece of media that I use not only in my classroom but every day, and that has also had a large impact on just life in general.
If you could go back to college, what would you do differently?
I think I would have gone to school closer to home. Not having a community can be really difficult. Or I would have gone to school closer to another set of family. I have family in California, and that would have been an option. But I think that going through such a momentous life shift where you have lived your entire life under the purview of your parents or your caretaker in general, and then you leave that, and you also leave all of the school requirements of like having to ask to go to the bathroom or having to be on time to class and getting tardies and discipline for that, to suddenly being in this incredibly unstructured situation where you're living alone or with roommates who are also like don't know what they're doing. It can be really overwhelming, and I think that if you have a support structure to help you through that, then you're going to have a much more successful time.
What advice would you give to students considering higher education?
Go to community college first. If you don't know what you're going to do, get your associate's degree and then transfer to a 4-year, because I think that it will serve you better in the future. Don't be afraid of being wrong. I think that the times that I was wrong were the times that were, though they were the most humbling, the times I think back on in my growth. Also, don't be afraid to be an outspoken voice in your classroom, because your thoughts are worth being heard.